look at yourself in this world?
Oh God. Why don't you start with this one? We'll start with you. Do you want to answer this?
I mean, we become so distant from ourselves. We are so out there that we forget to feel what's in there.
are like one
Choose
thing
to
we
be
really
in that
see
moment.
a
Changing, it's
lot.
evolving.
That
bit
way, if
by
I
bit.
have to
From
see
the
me,
outside, I won't even say person. It's
Yeah.
like this gaze. An animal, but I don't know if that's me. But I'm still someone who's looking. But that definition hasn't arrived yet.
That was so beautiful.
Hello and welcome to Self-Educated. Today's episode is with my friend Hiral Gosalia. Hiral is a curator of spaces which in turn help you to reach yourself. Hiral and I have common thoughts and common ideas about some things. We also differ in where we are in our lives, but something that we both hold true is the truth and the pursuit of it. And that always makes for interesting conversations. The reason I think this conversation turned out to be as interesting as it was is because Hiral also embodies the sense, the faith of self-educated. And not only that, but she also holds true that we need to pass things on and that we can make the world a better place. Without any further ado, here's our conversation.
So, what do you feel about podcasts? What do you think they mean to you?
I think podcasts are very interesting. It's like sitting in a conversation with someone else, but you're not really there, and you get to see all kinds of people talk, and you get to be a part of those conversations. And I don't think we've ever really had that, right, before podcasts.
I mean, the radio was a way, but it was still a commentary on things. It was just,
Yeah, broadcasting. I mean, that's where podcast comes from.
Yep.
You know where the name podcast comes from? So it actually comes from the iPod. So they would
Interesting.
have broadcasts that they would play on the iPod. So hence the name podcast. You could download them and you could listen to them on your iPod. So that's where the name podcast comes from.
When did you find out about it?
This?
Yeah.
I think a while ago when I was starting my own podcast. I was doing research
Okay.
about it. Yeah. What about you? What's going on in your head?
Like, pretty surprising. I don't know if it's like manifested thought, but I realized today that I do like to talk a lot, but in what I don't have a lot of people in my life right now who like to listen.
Okay.
So somehow like this setting,
Yeah.
like it fits. Like, it gave me like a first-hand experience. It's like, okay, this is something that I actually like,
Yeah.
or it's the perfect setting for me to speak about things that are in my mind without.
Right.
This is no judgment,
Yeah.
and it's still like it. Even if it was like a solo podcast, it still feels like a conversation with someone. Like, because of the setting in itself. Like, I'm not just talking to a wall, but I'm still talking to someone who's going to listen, be it like 100 hours down the line. But even if it's me listening to the same podcast in itself, but somehow this is my first podcast.
Okay.
So I've never really recorded something for myself before.
Right.
But in a way, that's something that I always think about. That you as a person, like everything that you are, like things you like to do or things you feel comfortable in, where does this person fit? Like, in what setting does this person fit? Like, just an example with me, that I'm someone who likes to, or forget likes to, but talking for me is good in a way. It clears my mind. Like, if I'm able to align with what I'm thinking and say it directly,
Yeah.
that's like practice. Like, have you ever thought of this, where talking is actually therapeutic?
Yeah.
Like, just talking without a purpose.
Yeah.
Like, free writing, free speech.
Mhm.
Okay, that makes sense.
It
lot
does
of
make
ways, yeah.
sense. It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Talking a lot of people can't think. Did you know this? Like, a lot of people have trouble thinking linearly if they were just to think, not talk. But talking is quite similar to thinking, right? It's just you are thinking out loud through your words. And what's fascinating about talking, which is something which you pointed out too, was that when you talk, sometimes you feel clearer or you feel lighter, and it's therapeutic.
Yeah.
The reason that happens is when we talk, we're actually thinking aloud. And sometimes, as you're in the flow of thinking, and what thinking is essentially is finding a solution to a problem. Right? Thinking is, you can't think without a question. Like, if you're not trying to solve a problem, it's like, why you're thinking. So thinking is a tool for problem solving, in that sense that we have. So what happens is, once you start talking in order to think, you enter this flow of trying to problem solve. And sometimes, even if you don't know what the answer to a particular problem is, in the midst of talking, because you've began this flow and you're going with the flow of whatever it is that you're feeling, things will reveal themselves to you, because your mind, your subconscious, begins trying to find the answers to your problems. So as you're talking, you are opening space for solutions to come to you. So yeah, a lot of people need to talk, and that's why it's always a peculiar feeling if you don't talk to someone for a while, especially when we're not feeling great. Sometimes feel like we want to talk to someone who's going to listen to us. It helps. But it makes sense what you're saying.
But like on the lines of problem solving, would you prefer thinking, like the flow of thought, or the flow of speech? If you had to like...
Neither. I think I'd prefer the flow of writing.
Okay.
Because writing is also the same, except it's slowed down.
Interesting.
Right?
That is the... Because I think in a way it's outside of us. It's still like speech, and I think writing somehow is like art again, where there's patterns drawn on a page that is, in a way, yeah. Writing does solve a lot.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, you've been like trained, it's like muscle memory again, where...
And something else that's interesting about writing, you're using your hands in a very intricate way. Like, in any form of thinking, you are using some resource of yourself, right? If you're thinking, it's your brain primarily doing stuff. If you're talking, it's your voice, it's the muscles in your face, you're emoting, and energy is being directed in different cycles in whichever form you're trying to think. And writing has got this additional element of using your hands, and your posture changes when you write as well. So I think all of these forms align us in particular ways that aid that particular process. And I don't know what it is, but I find my hands to be very, like, I have a very deep connection with them, because ever since I was a kid, I always used to do things with my hands. Like, it's sort of as though I've been training myself to do cool things with them. And I was thinking, like, so much of what I do, I wouldn't be able to do if it wasn't for my hands. There would be other ways, right, to go about it. I mean, you could adapt, but just the convenience that you have with like these, right? It's so
I mean, that's
incredible.
it does enable a lot.
A lot, and there's so much that you can do with them. It's like sometimes I feel as though I feel this way, I think, I guess, largely about my body, but in particular, my hands and legs, like they are the real vehicles of creating. My legs take me places, and my hands allow me to manipulate objects and matter into uh, things that I'm called to do for whatever reason. So I think that's why, like, writing specifically has got that element, it's got that attachment of my hand to my brain, or maybe somewhere else if it's not coming from the brain, but something like that.
Yeah, but in a way, like, that's true because sometimes even without writing, like, even if you just leave your hand free and you're flowing, scribbling, somehow it's still a sign. It'll still show you, reveal some part of you that you don't know.
Yes.
That most times, even the things we talk about, like, this is a language we've learned, but if we just pick up sounds, like, how a mic picks up sounds, that's how we've learned. By mirroring, by imitation. That's how our vocal cords and stuff. But with hands, that's the thing. Give it anything, it'll try to move. And with a sheet of paper, whatever it's generating on that sheet, like, it's in our control, but is it in our control? What do you think? When you're writing, for example, like without a prompt, like, you forget about journaling or anything, but if you have a sheet in front of you, there's something that you do with it. Like, even if it's a scribble, but there's always an urge to create. Like, have you always had this urge to create something in the world?
Interesting. It's interesting because the way that I think about that sentence about creating has taken on a very different meaning as to the way I think which you are describing it. Like, creating to me is not putting out what I create. That's what it's become. But when you spoke of it, I think what you meant was just create with no need to put it out or show it to someone or anything like that. In that sense, I think that unconsciously, yes, I was always doing stuff ever since I was a kid, making stuff, tearing stuff apart. Trying to think as to create. I think not just in forms of art, in art forms traditionally, the way that, but like I wanted to create feelings in people.
Okay, why would you want to create feelings for people? I mean, in a way, it's as in like, you'll provide, like, there will be some kind of stimuli, not stimuli, but I'm like, you will cause something whose effect will be that feeling within that person, in the most simplest way. But to create a feeling within someone, why?
I think that's a good question, and I think the only answer I have to that, I've thought about it, is just I think that's sort of my purpose, is to make people feel things.
And what if
good
it's
things, not bad things. I don't want to make people feel bad things, but good things primarily.
Okay, but what if they are bad people?
Okay, in what do you mean?
Just a bad person.
So even if they're a bad person, would I still want to make them feel good
if
things?
someone hurt you, if this person is like, doesn't make you feel good.
Okay.
But your purpose is to make them feel good. But isn't that too much pressure on you? In a way.
I mean, it's not something constant, right?
I understand that,
Yeah.
but even in the inconsistencies of it, even if it's like once in a while, but just having that as a purpose. Like, I'm not trying to judge your purpose here. Of course, it comes in good intentions. But is it really important to make someone feel good?
Yeah, see, now that's a really cool thread because then we'd have to define what makes something important,
Okay.
right?
I mean, that's a cooler thread.
But that's what, yeah, I guess that's what you pointed to. Do I think it's important?
No, it's just like up to you, right?
What do you mean?
So, even this opinion, not
Hmm.
opinion, but this, yeah, I can come closer. Um, everything that we get to pick,
Yeah.
like most of the times until like we find our own self concept in a way, we
Mhm.
still think according to others, like this
Hmm.
is what my mom would do or my best friend would do, and then we'd start having our own ways of, okay, this is how I do it,
Yeah.
that I, or like this ego self, that what would Ali do, like
Mhm.
in this situation. How often do you ask yourself that? Like we usually like not compare but draw the line from like, okay, what would a smart kid do here, or what would our parents do here.
Mhm.
So like this whole thing of importance, like what ideally at the end of the day is like, what do you find important?
Yes.
And that shouldn't be difficult to know. So what you find important, like in a way, everywhere, however humans behave with each other,
Mm.
the way I am behaving right now is how I want to be treated.
Mhm.
It's very identical to how I like being treated.
Mhm.
Most of the times we don't realize it.
Mhm.
But if I start imitating the way you are behaving with me, that
Yeah.
reciprocation happens. Like we're teaching each other how to behave in front of each other.
Mhm.
So in a way, like with all this peace and suffering that happens across the earth,
Mhm.
do you feel that the planet is teaching itself how to be and we're going against it in some ways? Or not, like we're just as we are supposed to be? Like everyone has to go towards destruction at some point.
Mm.
I know how this is all like moved on to a very big topic, but yeah. But this whole thing about like connecting from creation
Mhm.
to even Earth. Why was Earth created?
Yeah.
Like what is Earth's purpose in all of this?
Yeah.
The planet doesn't have a purpose. Why should I have one?
Mm. Okay. That's very interesting. I think that I'll talk about two things. I think one of the things, three things. Firstly, I think it's cool how you brought this forward, like this huge idea, right? And it's okay to discuss huge ideas. We
Yeah.
don't discuss huge ideas as often, so it's always fun when we do. That's one thing. The other thing is you said that it shouldn't be difficult to know what's important to you.
Yeah.
And that's my take on that is I think it's not for some people, and I think that it is for some people, and I think that to a large degree is not in our control. We can change the direction of that by taking responsibility. We're like, okay, I don't know what's important to me, I want to figure it out. Then we go ahead and figure it out. These would probably be people who would be difficult for them to find it. But I think that what sets these individuals apart in whether it's difficult for them to know what's important to them or not is just karma. I really think that's it. I think that we're all souls taking form to complete our karmic cycle, to unite with God. And I think that that's not just our purpose, but I think that's the whole purpose of the entire universe. And that's where Earth fits into this, is that you said, like Earth doesn't have a purpose. So why should I? Something like that. I don't remember exactly, but I think that, I mean, to assume that like we know what Earth is and what it is in in correlation to space and physicality and the whole universe in general, I think is quite ignorant. I don't know, because I have no idea what it is. But if I were to assume, and this is what I think that everything is, I think that it's all a field of consciousness trying to realize itself as the ultimate consciousness, or the ultimate mover of things, the cause behind every effect. And I think that that's what God is. God is essentially everything all at once. And it's also the ultimate manipulator of matter. It's like, they say God is omnipresent.
Yeah.
So what that means is that everything that's moving, like our cells in our body is moving, the cells in our bodies are moving, the air molecules are bouncing around, and we ask like, why is this happening, right? What's the purpose behind it? I think there's two things. Why is it happening, or how is it happening? I think ultimately people will realize that it's just God. Now our theory is like, this Big Bang happened and everything has been in perpetual motion since. We're just expanding because of this explosion that happened, right? Now that may be a very simplistic explanation. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physicist, so I don't know exactly. But that's the theory. But I think we're learning more and more, and ultimately what we're gonna collapse into is this idea that it's just God, and that's the ultimate purpose, is to realize ourselves as God. Now why? Right? Why is that the purpose? Because I think that once we realize, and by realize I'm using it in the sense, I think we've talked about this, but in like realization,
Yeah.
making something real in our present moment, is once we realize that we are God and we are the ultimate mover of everything, that is an ultimate feeling of just love. That's what love feels like. Love feels like an expanded self, and there is no more expansion than God. So the ultimate intention or purpose, I think, is just love. So God, we have become a separate individual. We've taken this form as a separate individual, and we've detached somewhat. We think we're detached from this whole unity, but through this detachment and through our mind, we are seeking to be fully attached once again. And that feeling of connection is what the purpose of our life is. And Earth, I think, is just a womb for that.
Interesting.
And but it may also be that, like, who knows, the Earth itself has got, I mean, this is definitely true, but the Earth itself is intelligent, So who knows, maybe Earth is on its own journey as well, like we are.
I mean, it certainly is. I mean, it's revolving for a reason. It's going somewhere for a reason.
I was, I heard this on a reel or something. It's sometimes cool, the stuff that you hear on the reel, but it's like our galaxy is gonna collide with another galaxy, and it's gonna become like a bigger galaxy, like some millions of years ahead.
Oh, I was actually, that's pretty cool though.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I saw this video about, it was about what's the future gonna look like, or what it is.
Okay.
And so they had a time, like 1 year down the line, 2 year down the line. It went to like 400 trillion years down the line, how it would be, and
Okay.
how the sun would just become like this frozen star, and it's glowing because it's dead, because of all the toxins or something.
Mhm.
And it was pretty interesting how someone has like visualized years down the line of how, like, everything, in a way, everything can be manipulated then. Our entire lives, like, can be written the day, like, right now itself. Like, if I know the tools, if I know myself that much, like life expectancy and like way of life and like the decisions I'll make, like it is easy to say that I have my life in control. And if I am calm through it, if I'm still through it, like there's just another quote that I heard from a movie yesterday from it's called The Lost City, and they are quoting from somewhere else where, like, if you keep your mind still, or if you have the courage to keep your mind calm, the universe will bow down to you, or it will be in your favor, or it'll like surrender to you.
Yeah.
So no matter what happens throughout, like as much as we're alive, if like this question is like now, like people don't get the seriousness of this question of like why were we put here, or what are we doing every day. Like we wake up, we sleep, we need to do something for a living or survive, but why do it at all? Like it's to survive, we need motivation, we need a purpose, we need a direction. But what if we were still throughout life? Like you just see what happens as much as you get. Like why do you want to keep having more of something? Like being content with as much as you get at any point of your life. Whoever walks in is a friend, like whoever leaves is also a friend. But you, instead of being in this system of humanity in a way, which is not even human anymore, like it's all these questions. Like I never thought about this, but I'm still talking about this. So everything that is just spoken about, or even the thoughts that randomly appear, someone is definitely messing with it, or like causing it, or like Earth is causing it. So, all these labels that we put, forget labels, but everything that we like calling God, like calling energy or consciousness, it's can be something, can be nothing, but it's still beyond our reach until we create something for it. Like, I have to create a physical form for it, for me to believe into it.
Yeah.
So, like, even in, so we did this iconography class in college where any idol, the way it is designed, like Ganesha also has like 4 arms and 4 different things, but each one has a story behind it. So, iconography is a study of the icons and how you can, like, it's a training. Anywhere you go, how to understand, like, even a temple, whatever is there, like, how I can study it and, like, understand from where it's from.
Yeah.
And she's an atheist, but she knows everything about religion.
Okay.
And the way she puts it as like, religion was created so that man could like go on. Like, man needed a higher being to like, stay grounded. Yeah.
Organize itself.
Yeah, they weren't happy with themselves, that they had to create a god for themselves to like, stay disciplined, or like, why do we need a higher authority or something to stay accountable to at all times?
Yeah.
Like, do we not have enough faith in ourselves to do something without accountability? Like, even if it's accountability to yourself, why is there a need for it? To be accountable.
Well, have you tried being like not accountable?
I mean, yes, and I was miserable, I agree. but like, these, like, everything that I see, from a school perspective or like parent perspective, or even friendship in that way, like each does demand a level of accountability.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even, I think the opposite would be just being responsible on your own. Like,
Mhm.
if it could be taught that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if in school I was taught to be a responsible student
Yeah.
more than obeying my teacher and, like, marks and this and that, and be driven by that mindset.
Yeah.
Everywhere I see now is always the selfish intent.
Mm.
Like, for the school, they want like high scores. That's why they will, like, make the kids do this and that. But they don't see that the child has to grow.
Mm.
Like, our benefit will come through that.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So this is coming from like saying that a sense of accountability and responsibility for the child to want that for themselves is more valuable than the selfish intent of the school doing it for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, that's how even like education became a business this way.
Yeah.
We don't want to go there. But
So, yeah. So with God and religion, this is the way I was the first person who talked to me about psychology, explained it to me as a study of patterns,
Wow.
as a study of patterns of ways in which people behave. But the way in which they described it to me felt a lot more expanded. And at that point in time, I was just familiarizing myself with the concept of the universe and being connected. And I was trying to think of bigger ideas. I was trying to find a meaning that sustained me in my life, because I had also at that point sort of realized that, okay, wait a second, everything is inherently meaningless, and I was also getting to specifics of that with language is meaningless. So all the thoughts in my head are essentially meaningless. It's me who's creating the meaning. It's like me who's imagining the meaning, and hence it's becoming real for me. But at that point, that's where I was, right? I was there, and then they talked to me about psychology, and that intrigued me. But it was also their passion behind their words that also came through, that made this idea stick in my mind. So I think that with religion, excluding out the clear reason for religion being used as a tool for maintaining hierarchies and controlling political power in society, if we were to look at it from a tool for enlightenment, it gives us a roadmap, or it's sort of an ultimate hierarchy. That's what it is for ourselves. And that hierarchy, I think, has been set, like that form has been like with God at the top, and then let's say a prophet second, and then other values and rules and ways to orient ourselves, things like behaviors, right? Things to do, things to avoid, all this sort of stuff, right? If we were to take this as a hierarchy with God at the top, I think that it's not by coincidence that most religions follow the same pattern and somewhat talk about the same principles. There are different principles in different religions, but in my exploration of them, I have found that a lot of them have common threads running through them, and these are the threads which I have seen mirror my life, in the sense that I see truth in them. And I think that, whenever we align ourselves with truth, and when we try to do that, that's the only time, that's like a very sure way of avoiding disease, disturbance, like mental disturbance and just health, when we do align with or try to align with the truth. It's not always easy because we don't know what the truth is with things. And the truth, then the question becomes, okay, what is the truth? And that's the really cool part, is that most of us don't know what the truth is.
But the question also comes with that: do you even want to know the truth? Are you a seeker of it or not? Like, most times, okay, we know there's treasure somewhere, okay, it's there.
Mhm.
But how motivated are you to find it or seek it? Or like even search for it? Like, are you keeping an open mind with things? Or like, are you being stubborn about it? Or that you make up your own truth instead of actually like making the effort to find out. So that also comes into account when, like, it's okay, we don't know what the truth is, but are we willing to find out? Are you willing to being patient enough to like experience the process toward the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, are you okay with not knowing? That's the main thing.
That's also important.
I mean,
yeah.
ideally, every day becomes that. It's just we've been doing it for years and years that we don't really notice that every day is something that we don't know.
Yeah.
And we still jump into it because, like, yeah, it's night.
We
and
don't
then
have
it's
an
day.
option, do we?
We don't have an option.
It's interesting because, I think that everyone wants to know the truth. Everyone. Even if they are the most ignorant, dismissive individuals because of whatever. I think that what drives life, the main force behind life, is that truth. And what we are trying to do is realize that truth. The truth is there. And it's there in the sense that it's here. And that's what's so fascinating about it, right? In the sense that, like, you've got the major contribution of humanity to humanity till now, I could say, has been science. Okay. If we were to take it like, what's improved the quality of our life, like in the form of like utility, stuff that's made us healthy, blah blah blah, right? Apart from, I mean, a case could be made that, okay, wait a second, so this was just evolution and our brains becoming different, so we were able to use tools.
Yeah, in a way,
And
science provided, like, it gave a platform to the research. It made research available. Like, it made that experience of getting to know something and putting it to paper, where it could be analyzed, assessed. I think that's what science is. It's not the content that we got, but the process behind it.
Sure. Yeah, the process allowed for a representation of the truth to be accepted as that, right?
Or even like put to the test of, or it was just presented as an option that you want to believe it, not believe it, have your own opinion, but it just gave a base.
It works.
Yeah.
That's the thing with science. It's like, you want to believe it, not believe it, whatever, but it works.
It works.
But there is an inherent error in that, in my understanding of it, is because what works is dependent on our definition of what it is that is working.
Okay.
So, like, I mean, in essence, like if I'm trying to think of sciencey things right now, for whatever reason, the first thing that came to my mind apart from gravity was, um, okay, let's take gravity. Why not? So, if I were to pour water from this bottle into this cup, it would fall downwards. And, if we were to ask why, science says that something along the lines of, matter, like condensed matter, which has a higher mass, tends to attract things towards itself. Heavier things attract lighter things towards itself because, and I've asked myself, okay, why? Why does that happen? And a cool way, and I don't have an answer to that, by the way. Do you? Like, why is it that heavier objects attract, lighter objects towards themselves? That's something that I haven't found an answer to. And you think that this is something that, we should know, right? Like they say that, hey, there's this invisible force that's the reason why you're not floating off into the abyss of space. But we're not entirely sure of how it works, or we're not going to tell you, because we haven't been told. But anyway, but when we're doing that, there's a few things that we're assuming, right? Firstly, we're assuming that matter exists. That's just one thing that we're assuming.
Yeah.
But then we don't know what things are made of. Like that's just a fact. We don't know what things are made of. We know that they're made of atoms, and atoms have, let's say, the smallest particles that I'm aware of that we know of are quarks. But we don't know
what?
Quarks? Have you heard of quarks?
No.
Okay, they're like tiny subatomic particles that people say the universe is sort of made of. Like,
So there's something smaller than atoms.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Because like the confusion there is because we were told that atoms are the smallest particles, right? But even within atoms, like there's, or is it within an atom or surrounding it? There's like the proton and electron, which are smaller things. But then we don't know what those are, right? So essentially we don't know what the universe is made of. But then we're assuming that when there's a bunch of these things which we don't know is made of together, it has this effect on something else that has less of what this is made of. Like 10 atoms pull one atom towards itself, right? And you're telling me, or we're believing that, okay, this invisible thing, this force is gravity. Now it works if you believe those axioms or those ways of thinking linearly together form that belief. But they only form that belief, and it only works, it upholds what's called as true if you believe it, right? If we don't believe it, if we question, let's say, deeper into it and like, I don't know what this is made of, then it doesn't work, right? It becomes something that's subjective.
How would you teach belief to a kid? What belief is? What do you think belief is?
Okay. Well, let's try. So, a belief is something which you paint. I won't say this to a kid. I think I'll make it simpler, but I need to know what it is.
Words,
so,
yeah.
Okay. Belief is you painting the world with your imagination into what you think things really are. What makes it real?
Something you practice your trust on?
Yeah, something that allows you to function in the world because it has proven to remain constantly the same. Okay? So if you were to say like I believe that this is a glass, in our whole experience of life, this has been a glass, and most people agree that this is a glass. So we can believe that this is a glass. So I think that essentially, I think that's what a belief is. But I also know that that's only imaginary. Okay? Because there's so much to unpack. Like, what is a glass then, right? You could think about that. And it's not so clear as to what it is. What it is what we want it to be.
Yeah. But most times we don't know what we need. Forget need, but like we don't know what we want most times.
Yeah.
But is it even our wants, or is it somebody else's that you want for yourself?
Yeah, that kind of brings us back to the whole important situation as to like what is important for us.
Absolutely.
And it also brings us back to the need for orienting ourselves with certain things so that our life makes sense, and I think that that's something that, and I think that we are designed in that way. Like, I'm very curious about why human beings turned out the way that they did,
Yeah.
like looking at evolution, the way that what we went from to what we are now, and why the feelings that we have feel like the feelings that they are. I'm very curious about that. And the only answer that I've come to as to why we feel what it is that we feel is because our system, the human system, allows itself to be aligned with forces of the universe. And in doing so, what we feel is not, I don't think is, and this sentence is actually very tricky. I'll explain why after I say it. I don't think that it's our feelings that we are feeling, but I think our feelings are what's out there that we are channeling through this system.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right? So like there's fear, gratitude, happiness, sadness, misery, joy, bliss, whatever, paint the whole world with like, emotion.
Yeah.
Then I think this system is capable of channeling these feelings. But I think these feelings are, I don't know what these feelings are, but yeah. And the reason why I said I think that these are tricky is that I said I distinguished between us and those things, right? But then where's the boundary? If that's what we are feeling, if we're connecting with that, then where's exactly the boundary between what we think is us and what is not us?
How would that matter? Like knowing or setting boundaries. Like in a way, ethically, it's about the impact we leave. Like for example, right now, if I am channeling bad energy from somewhere, I am harming my body and people around me. So if forget them, but what if I'm channeling what you're feeling?
Yeah.
Like if I have to, so that way whatever you are, whatever I am is one whole. There's no boundary here.
The interesting thing about the boundary as well, and this is the biggest mindfuck that I've ever experienced in my life, is every boundary that we have about our own self, our individual, what the individual we believe that we are, and that belief of the individual that we are makes up who we are in our real life. It's the most real thing to us. And you wake up out of bed and you look, and you think that there is a perceiver behind your eyes that looks at the external stimulus around you, the wall, the fan, whatever it is that we're staring at. The biggest mindfuck that I have experienced is I realized that this was only a belief.
Right.
Right? And once I realized it was a belief, then there was that moment of, oh shit, then what am I? Right? And then that expanded to, oh, wait a second, I am this towel. There's no difference between me and this towel. And then that happened, and I felt connected. I felt sort of at one with the space that I was in, because these boundaries are just beliefs, but they're so strong. They're so strong that they make up our experience of life as we live it, right? The way in which we live it. So you thinking that you're Hiral and everything that means is that.
Yeah.
We contain ourselves with these boundaries. And essentially I've also seen that that's what yoga is. That's what yoga in the traditional sense is designed for, Yoga means union. That's what the word means. Yoga. It means to unite, to become one. And I've seen, and this is very natural and very normal, like you'll see this, if you take care of yourself the way that you need to, in a way that aligns with truth, and if you align yourself with that consciously, and you begin to just move towards that, like allow it to take you to wherever that it's taking you, and you just take those steps, you will experience these experiences. That's what's cool about it. It's like it's not something to just, it's not something that's not accessible to us. It's something that's accessible to us, but we need to want it for ourselves, and we need to take the right steps to experience these things. But once you experience it, there's no going back. It's like your whole life, your whole purpose behind your life, what you think you are, what you think other people are, which is everything essentially. What you think you are is everything to you. It all changes. So that's the profound yet very easily, what's the word here, overseen effect of a boundary.
Like in other words, this also sounds like this is an energy field, and even if it's like us, like what energy we bring in the environment, or even if it's the curtains, the colors, like the technology even, we're channeling everything through this one monitor, like through sensation in a way. So what a mic does to sound, it's giving it a portal to travel. So what our body is like channeling something. So it's like everything that we experience, like it's an energy field of a sort.
Yeah.
Like wherever we walk through, even if it's in an elevator, through a door, or on grass, anything. It's like receptors are catching something and throwing it somewhere. It's like we're absorbing intelligence or data, and it's forming thoughts. So even like evolution is happening within us, through us. Like whatever consciousness is, like when you say that, how did man become this way? Who picked all of this? Or how did it reach here? So I think it's consciousness knowing itself and upgrading it on its own.
Yeah.
And like boundaries are okay. Are boundaries good?
Are boundaries good?
Like if
Yes.
we were put here and we were supposed to experience everything that came our way without being attached to it, if we were detached from everything,
Yeah. Well, see,
I
here's
think,
here
yeah, okay.
here's the thing with boundaries. Leaving good or bad aside for a second, without boundaries, we wouldn't be. Okay? Because the only thing that's making us us is boundaries. If there were no boundaries, we would be boundless.
Isn't that the way God is?
Yeah, yeah. But then if we are God, you won't be Hiral, right? That's okay. But I'm saying that the reason we are is because of boundaries.
But is it a good
And
thing that we are?
here's my thoughts on that. Being like good or bad morality, usually um, it has a few different things that it serves. Morality has a few different purposes that it serves. One of them is the continuation of our survival. So things that threaten our survival we label as bad, and things which benefit or cradle our survival we call as good. So in that sense, is the question is, are boundaries good? It would depend on, okay, what are we comparing this to? What version of morality are we applying to it, right?
Makes sense.
So is our boundaries good for us becoming God? To a degree, yes, they are. Because your form, you have the best shot at realizing God. See, because I think that now this is something that is speculation, right? I have no way of knowing this, but it's a thought process that makes sense to me. Is that if we are souls who have identified as separate from God, then the only way we're gonna reunite and become whole again is through that realization. And that realization has a karmic process that it needs to go through, right? Like it needs to go through the stages of like, there's different theories on this, and none of this really matters per se, but like they say, okay, first you need to be like you need to be like matter, and then you need to be like this animal, then this animal, then this and that, and then man is like the final stage of that until you can transcend. And you keep repeating your life as a man, as an individual, until you transcend. So for that sense, we have the best shot at uniting if our bounded form is thriving, right? So if we're looking at morality as, and I think that essentially that's the whole purpose of morality, is to guide us to a place, and that's the whole, I think, reason for survival as well. It's like so that we survive until we unite. So are boundaries good? They're necessary. I know that. But yeah, even I talk about all this stuff, but then I'm also not, I'm still on the way, right? So there is a lot of uncertainty about all of this. These are just things that I know, and know in the sense that I hold as possibly true. And these are things which make sense to me. I think that these patterns that I have observed are the most accurate patterns that I've observed so far. And I've experienced a bit of it.
Okay.
So I feel that it's true, and that the path that I'm on is essentially eventually going to fully, I'll be able to fully realize all of this. Yeah. But yeah, until then, like, this is just the way in which I think of the world. It's not, this is the way in which I look at the world. This is the way in which I assume the world is.
How do you look at yourself in this world? If you had to yeah, this is a question that I think I need to start asking myself. Like, how do you look at like this 21-year-old girl or thing floating in space?
It's like what's, in psychological terms, it would be like, what's your self-concept?
Yeah.
No. Oh God. There's many ways, but why don't you start with this one? We'll start with you. Do you want to answer this?
I mean, I still remember the first time I was asked this question. I was terrified because I was like, I had no idea.
Okay.
Like, this was in psych class in 11th grade, 11th or 12th, personality they were teaching. And the way she opened the class was like, 3 people, whoever it is, stand up and start talking about yourself. And the easiest 3-4 questions, okay, just like, introduce yourself. And I was just paranoid, worried that I didn't know what my favorite color was. Like, and that was it. Enough for the paranoia to kick in, that you had no... It's like we become so distant from ourselves. Like, we are so out there that we forget to feel what's in there. Like, even the channeling process, like, you have to be here to feel things.
Yeah.
But if I'm always outside of me, within things, through things, within people, like if I'm just worried about what you're feeling, what you're doing, and forget me. So I think my self-concept began from being nothing to like slowly emerging out of the blue. That, okay, I am here, like this is me, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Like, just hands started it when you like, you feel a sensation, like, I think hands are like one thing we visually see a lot, apart from the rest of our body.
Yeah.
It's always in front of our face, like, okay, what is she doing with herself? And like, all the actions and the language and the body. But at this point, like, just to like, if I had to like take a screenshot of my feeling right now, as it is, without like, okay, this is not happy, not sad, but it's something. And if I just write down a description on it, I think my self-concept is like, as everyone else's, it's changing, it's evolving bit by bit. It's like the present moment, like going at every second with every breath you take. So that way, if I have to see me from the outside, it's a blurry image in a way. It's still not formed. It's not confident.
Yeah.
It's this scared little... I won't even say person.
Yeah.
But it's like this gaze. Like, I think it's just a vision of, like, in a dream, basically, how when you're dreaming at night, you're necessarily not a part of the picture, but it's just your vision. You're just looking through that lens. Like, I don't see myself as like an animal in my dream. There is an animal, but I don't know if that's me. But I'm still someone who's looking. So if I had to picture that this is me, and like, if I'm just imagining what I'd look like from this direction, I think it would just be something still in time. Something that was just there, present. Like, how this bottle is just present here. Like, it's doing something. It's just there. I don't know how these words are coming, but the self-concept, like, even like having a concept is again like putting words to something. It's like you're defining something in a way. But that definition hasn't arrived yet. It's still traveling. It's still forming in a way. It's air. Yeah, I don't know what's... Yeah. It's the most...
That was so beautiful. And I think... Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't think Wow. But there was something initially as you were talking that caught my attention that I wanted to ask you about. You said that for some time you weren't in touch with yourself. You were so out there.
Yeah.
Out where exactly? So, yeah, it's like,
Okay, easiest example. I'd become someone you'd want me to be. Like if there are some things that are lacking within you or something you need, I'd become the need. I'd fill in the gaps. But what I was transforming myself into those things. So everywhere I went would be your definition of who I am. Like I never had my own self concept. I took what I was given. Like if I was told I am this, I was that.
mm,
Like I would fit myself in any situation. Like it didn't have to be me by my choice. Like a self concept is a self choice. What do you choose to be in that moment? Like in that question of like, okay, who are you? I could say I'm a carrot. I could say I am nothing. Or I could say I am God. It's my belief on it. Or it's my choice of words or my choice of beliefs of what do I want to be here. But if I never gave myself that option to choose or to pick, and I'd just be like from whichever scenario I was in, that yeah, I was the girl in the group, or I was the girl in the classroom, or I was the girl behind the camera.
yeah.
But who is that person behind the camera? If
Yeah.
I never took time to understand what I was feeling,
Yeah.
or I never even thought of the person I was.
Yeah.
I just think it in your perspective.
Yeah.
Like, what does Ali think of me? I'm
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then I'm shaping myself to that.
Yeah.
But what does Hiral want to be
Yeah.
with Ali?
Yeah.
So, not being in touch with myself was that never giving myself an option to have a self concept. Nahi, hey, this is you. Not this is what you want to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, like as you're talking about all this, I'm just thinking like that is just so beautiful. There's so much beauty in that I see, and I think that makes me think about beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And I've thought about what beauty is. And I think that what beauty is essentially is it's different for different people. Beauty is very subjective to the individuals, but I think what people find as beautiful is what they are ready for as recognizing as God or something divine. That's, I think, what beauty is. What we think, because what beauty is it's a feeling of it's a feeling that makes us feel bigger than we are.
Beauty?
Right? It brings in the feeling of, it expands something in us. And if you think of, whenever you think of something as beautiful, your chemistry just becomes somewhat sweeter, like you have this sweetness of emotion, this sweetness of feeling, this longing as well.
Easier to accept.
Yeah. Now I think that what that is, it's something that is calling us towards itself. Like there's something there that you need to. It's like the ultimate invitation. It's like God is saying, hey, I'm inviting you to come to me, to come find me through this, So I think that the reason I found your explanation there of how you were feeling as something very beautiful was because it held ascension in it, you know? Like if you were to graph this out, the graph would be upwards. It was, you felt smaller, you felt, let's say, cocooned, you know, in that initial way of being. But then, not even cocooned. If we were to just take the whole like metamorphosis situation, let's say that you were a worm,
Yes.
right? And then the realization of this and then working on yourself was the cocooning,
Yes.
right? And then it was the butterfly that you are now. And it's so interesting because like I got to see you in both situations, you know, before when we met first and then after when we bumped into each other that night. Then just seeing how different you were and how much more vibrant and just loving you are now is something that I think is really cool and really beautiful. And yeah.
I'm speechless, but I can say one thing, that it wasn't the words or like word beauty to me. Like I'm stealing this from a movie again.
Okay.
Beauty is what lies in the beholder's eyes. Like that's, you created that beauty through realizing something, that you were conscious enough of what you were listening
Yeah.
to, and that gave you a passage to beauty.
Mm.
And you made again, you applied yourself and you created, like, it could have just been words, it could have just been an answer, but you made it beautiful by recognizing it,
Right.
right? So this is, in a way, beauty is you.
Mm.
It's someone who
Yeah.
recognizes the truth behind something or gives it a truth.
Yeah.
It's
Or
like,
just feels the truth rather, right? Feels
Yes.
true to them.
and that only happens when you are true to yourself, or you find whatever you speak true, that you have that faith with yourself. It's not even within, but just with yourself, that I know that whatever Hiral does will be honest to her level.
Yeah.
Like even if it's an action or a behavior or a word, it's true to that moment in time.
Yeah.
Like it may be different throughout the years,
Mm.
but at all points of her life, I think that's what I want for her.
Mm.
That she's just honest to her moment.
Yeah.
That whatever she's channeling, she knows and she can see it and
Mhm.
recognize it.
Mhm.
Make it beautiful for herself.
Mhm.
And that's what you teach me.
Me?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, see, I'm gonna
Yeah.
take that because it's not like I'm oblivious to that. Like that's, oh, I'm so surprised that happened. No, it's like that's my ultimate intention. You
I
know,
mean, now it makes sense. Yes.
you know, with the stuff which I was saying initially about what I was called to do was to make people feel good things. You know, and that was,
I got an example of it.
I guess, I mean, so that's what I want to do, and that's what I want my work to be. And I think that we definitely did that today.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
um,
That's one thing. But again, like a full circle, knowing me before, this whole metaphor that we've had, like from a
worm.
worm
Yeah, not
to
the
a
okay.
shell to a butterfly. But
Yeah.
even this transformation, it's because it's not just me.
Hmm?
But again, each time that you've seen me, you were there too. So part of that change was the added consciousness. Like even for that worm to turn into something, it needed that extra energy in the
Mm.
presence of something that was able to
That
evolve.
inspired it, right?
Yeah. Like
Mm.
inspired it in the sense
caused it to be inspired, not inspired it.
or something helped it to mature,
Yeah.
to get to that stage.
Right.
And then once it was ready to
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
So
And
everything that you impact on earth,
Mhm.
or so that's the thing, that you don't need to focus on yourself throughout life,
Mm.
but focus on the impact you're leaving behind.
Mm. You know, the two things. One of them is when you asked, like, not you asked, you kind of asked, but you were talking about the earth and what the purpose of the earth is. I think that is your answer to that. It's just that we are continuously uh, causing each other to get through the karma, get through our own karma, so that we can move higher and higher in our sense of consciousness and what we can experience as us and God, essentially, like becoming one with that, whatever you call God, which is that ultimate unity, that space. That's one thing. The other thing is the reason why I asked you how you felt when you were in that worm stage is because I was, it was surprising to me, because somewhat surprising. There was elements of it which was surprising in the sense that you said that didn't feel good, right? Because bhakti or bhakt, which is service,
Yeah.
this sense of selfless service, is also said to be one of the ways in which you can attain God. So that's something that I found very fascinating. But I think the key distinction there is the willingness of the surrender of the self. That wasn't there before. That was a compulsive need, rather, right? Than a conscious surrendering.
That's the thing, like in life, like all you have to do is ask the right questions. The answers will pop on its own. Like, even if it's within like a conversation. I think that's the purpose of a podcast in a way, that it gives you a platform to give your voice an importance. Give your, like, anything that you're channeling, like, be it talks about, or the topics can be anything, but the sensation underlining it, like through these topics, like the topic was just a medium for the intelligence to come in, or like the consciousness to become active. Like here, our primary focus is not just what we're saying, but also what we're putting out there to achieve, like all the questions that I could give in, like helped you reach those depths within you to get them out.
Yeah.
Like that's what, yeah. I love podcasts.
This is so
man.
interesting. Like you talking, like with the things that you're saying, obviously they're just interesting in themselves. But it's funny how you are one by one answering all the questions that you were asking initially.
Yeah.
So now when you were talking about talking and reaching those depths, that was like the first thing I think that we spoke about, right?
Yeah.
With talking as a medium of like thinking and why that happens. That's cool.
I mean, see, that's the thing then. Like, if it took, 90 minutes for this? Like, throughout life, everywhere we go, every interaction we make, we keep asking questions, but we don't wait for answers. But if we stay in that setting, if we stay in that mind space and wait, like, see what's coming after this. There is a pattern that that anything that you put out there will bounce back and come in another way.
But you need to be open to receiving it as well.
Yes.
It's interesting that I think you are the first person I've spoken to who also does this.
Okay.
Who just like asks a question and then waits to get an answer. Because consciously, I think people do this unconsciously all the time. Like if you want something, that's basically asking for it, right? In one way or the other, and then it happens. That's just the way it goes. But yeah, I don't think that like people you do this as a conscious exercise. Like if there's something wrong, if you have a problem, like you just sit down, make space and ask It's like, okay, what's wrong? Why is it wrong? Why do I think that it's wrong? What can I do to make it better? And then allow, I mean, this is sort of what I do. I just allow my being to guide me. And it does things, and it's not always, it doesn't give you the right answers right away. But what it does is that I think you may have also seen this. You can maybe relate to this in some senses. When you ask those questions and the answers do come up, they're not particularly solutions, but they are rather things which you need to experience, get out of your system. And then once you do that, that was the solution.
Yes.
It might be that, let's say, you're thinking about a relationship, right? You're like, okay, is this the right relationship to pursue? And you won't know, but there'll be something inside you that you realize you want. And once you're at that, you have to make a decision, right? Now, the decision you make will lead to feelings that you have that will determine whether that was the right decision or wrong decision in your experience. But then that brings up more questions. Once you ask these questions, it opens up more questions for you, in the sense like, what even is a right decision? What is my definition of a right decision? Let's say that relationship was something you thought you wanted, and then you went for it, but it didn't feel good. Like you got really hurt, and maybe, let's say it was like really bad. You guys cheated on each other and it was just like toxic and whatever. And then you come out of it saying, maybe that was not the right decision. But you wanted to do it. So it was the right decision, right? And now, but then it was because you did it that now you're thinking, you've gone one stage deeper into your thought. It's like, okay, I wanted the relationship. Why did I want it? And then these like darker sides of you that are probably subconscious patterns or unconscious patterns reveal themselves. So you're like, oh, wait a second. I wanted the attention from the relationship. It wasn't because I was called to love this person, or it was this, or it was this, or it was this. So it may take time, but it's like, I think it's about intention.
Yeah.
What's the intention behind what you're doing? That intention will lead you deeper into the source of that intention.
I think like an experience also reveals a lot about our intent, what we came with, and however that experience unfolds, like the outcome or the output of that like experience is definitely like ruled by the intent. That how your intent is also changing throughout that experience, and then what it ends up with. It may start with like a good heart, but in the end you did like, your intent was to be validated, which didn't happen. You started with something, but then that intention also mutated on its own. Like if you stuck to your good intent, like, no, I want to just be nice and like polite and stuff, that would help you balance that relationship as well. But when you allow your intent to change, I think that's what's directly proportional to your experience of it. Like, I know a good intent, a good heart will provide good feeling. Like, it will enable that good energy out.
Yeah.
But when the source of that energy, that intent again, is changing, even that feeling will change.
And I think that it's necessary for these feelings to change, for the learnings, for us to learn to love deeper.
Right.
Love better. And that's something that I've learned, I think, even recently a bit more, and over the past few years of like just learning to love more, I think that loving is probably the hardest thing to do, and to learn to love deeper. I think essentially that's the hardest thing that you can do, because if this is true, that love is the highest quality that people have wanted to emulate, because they believe that it is the very structure of our universe. Like love is it. Like that's all. Then the attainment of that, the integration into that as an individual with like boundaries. There may not be something that is more difficult to do than the complete integration of these things as individuals within ourselves. Like, I mean, obviously there's things that are hard as well, like, like rocket science and learning new skills and blah, 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 blah. But even those things are just a practice in love, because what you're doing is you are becoming one with this thing which you find to be engaging or interesting, but what you're doing in that is you are updating your consciousness to include more of the world into yourself. That's why it feels good. I think that's what defines good and bad, actually, in terms of feeling, is what makes you feel united versus separated. And what I wanted to say was that that's why I think loving is really the hardest thing to do. And I think being patient with ourselves in recognizing that we are not perfect lovers. We are...
But then the question comes that do you want to be a perfect lover or just a lover of or like a true lover in the sense of what's true to you, what's capable of you at that point. Like whatever you're capable of, if you can channelize that energy into love, I think that's more important than being a perfect lover. Or I think that's what a perfect lover is.
Okay, there we go. It is. Yeah, you're right.
At all points, no matter what level you're at. But if you can remove some part of it or channelize it into love, like that's what like, you see all these posts on Instagram about like how, what is that word? Like, how in families, like earlier it used to be like abuse and stuff, like, and then you can be that barrier that changes.
Generational
trauma.
Yeah.
Generational trauma. So this is the same thing, that whatever stage they were at, instead of channelizing the same thing, they converted it into love, and then that energy started flowing ahead. It's like you put a boundary on that trauma or that suffering in a way. So it's like if all of this energy is going through me and like out of me, like, everything that I consciously put out there has to be wrapped with love. Yeah.
Try to be wrapped with love, at least.
I mean, if
try to be
but that's the thing. Why we say it's difficult to love is because we find it easy to hate.
Yeah. Yeah, but...
Because we're so judgmental of others, or like, their intentions. Like, our focus is on outside.
Yeah.
Like, but if I keep focusing on me, what is my intent? Forget about that person. Like, that way. So if I am focused on my intent behind my purity of my love, or like I'd love a remote as much as I'd love a pen. Like, why do we have that differentiation? I want to love a butterfly the same as a worm.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's the stages of... it's the same being. Like, for example, right now, I'm a shitty person. But I can grow into a better one. Like, if I have that much faith in or like in the transformation of things, like, that's how, like, acceptance and, like, all of that. But yeah, I don't think loving is hard. It's like...
recognizing that we're loving is... something that we're not used to.
In a way, when to stop loving is hard. Or like, for example, the direction in which, who are you loving at this point? Yourself or somebody else?
Or or you're loving fear, which is
Comfort.
which is the feeling of not feeling good. Maybe you're loving the feeling of not feeling good.
Yeah.
That's why you don't feel good. But the reason you don't feel good is because you're choosing to love that instead of
Yeah.
love what it is that you think you want.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh God. Okay.
I think, yes, we're gonna.
Should we stop it there?
Yes, let's like cliffhanger.